Back again. So hustle hit adrenaline. I'm Shan. No, I'm not. So Dragged MP4 made its massive return today. I'm so sorry that I haven't posted in what has been months, but kinda didn't feel like it. But I got re-inspired. I felt the urge again, and I was kind of pondering with this video idea for quite some time, and I thought, why not just do it? So today, we're going to be reviewing a season that I feel like does not get enough love. All Stars Season 4, to me, when we disregard like the last two episodes, was one of the best seasons of All Stars to date. We had a plethora of queens that are phenomenal: Valentina, Naomi, Trinity, Monet, Monique, Latrice, Manila, to name a few. And we had the first season of All Stars, who truly actually, where we had genuine competitive moves being made. The seasons before teased competitive decisions, but the lipstick decisions ended up being quite diplomatic. But it was not until this season where queens actually faced consequences for their behaviors in the workroom. And for that, this season became immediately addictive and quite delicious. This, paired with the fact that All Stars 4 had some of the best challenges to date, with the LaLaPaRuZa challenge, with the girl group challenge, with the Best Judy Makeover challenge, I thought it was a really successful season that to this day I go back on. But I do feel like the judging with this season was kind of weird. I felt like a lot of times certain queens were systematically being placed safe or got wins that I don't really feel like they deserved. So in this video, I'm going to be judging this fairly, which though of course is not really a thing, right? It's going to be my subjective opinion ultimately either. Like, I'm not really mad at the judging. I can also appreciate the fact that maybe these judges just had different subjective experiences or like opinions than I did. But in this video, I'm going to be judging this quite fairly, in what at least I consider fair. The video has also been massively inspired by my current obsession with sibling rivalry, and I watched the episode about Monet X Change winning All Stars 4, and how Bob doesn't think that it should have been a tie, that Bob the drag queen actually thought that Trinity got a lot of wins that were actually better suited to Naomi and Monet, or that Naomi in general was quite robbed, or that Monet should have been single-handedly crowned. And I was thinking, is that true? Was it really that sort of biased for Trinity? Well, today we are going to be finding out. So some of the burning questions, of course, are like, how will the All-Star Spangled Variety Show be turning out and judged? Will the All-Stars lip-sync LaLaPaRuZa have a different ending? And will we even have a double crowning? Let's deal with these questions. We'll start with the very first episode, the aforementioned All-Star Spangled Variety Show. Already in this episode, we will see that my opinion differs quite a bit. My top 3 of the week were Gia, Trinity, and Naomi. To me, Monique's performance was good, was perfectly safe, but it did not meet the sort of comedic and fierceness of Naomi's performance, or the artistic genuineness of Gia's performance. To me, Monique's performance was perfectly safe. It was a bitch track that was well written, the gag of her singing live was great, her choreography was nice, but it was nothing to write home about. Whereas though Trinity's stand-up dance performance, Naomi's voguing ending with a comedic element, and Gia's cultural traditional dance were really magnifying. So these 3 are my top 3 of the week, with Trinity and Naomi being my top 2 of the week. I think Gia's performance was great, but I felt Trinity and Naomi's performance to be especially well. In the bottom 3, I agree with the judges. It was Monet, Jasmine, and Farrah, with ultimately Monet being saved from the bottom placement and Farrah and Jasmine there. Now a lip sync between Trinity and Naomi will be gaggy, and I think Naomi will win this. The only reason why Trinity won the lip sync against Monique was because Monique lost, not because Trinity really won, because Monique lost her wig obviously. Naomi is probably the best lip syncer this season, and her going against Trinity has a clear outcome. Based on how she behaved in the untucked or semi-untucked in the episode, I'd assume she'd eliminate Jasmine here. Now let's go into episode 2. The girl group challenge. The challenge I feel like should return. Like they have girl group challenges, but like not like they did on All Stars 4, and I just want that to return because I thought that was really fun. Here again, my judging deviated a bit from that of the judges. My top 3 of the week though were the same ones: Monet, Naomi, and Valentina. And my bottom 3 though were different. I agree with Monique and I agree with Farrah, but to me Gia also should have been in the bottom. I thought Gia's performance kind of stood out like a sore thumb in her group. It was kind of negative. But don't compare me to these hags line I thought was kind of off-putting, and I thought that her runway look, ultimately the Eleganza runway, was kind of basic. I agree that Manila's performance was also fairly flat, but her runway should have immediately placed her safe in comparison to Gia, who I don't feel like should have been saved here. Ultimately, I think the top 2 of the weeks would be the same for me, between Monet and Valentina. I do think those were the best 2, though Naomi could have easily also snagged the win here. And I think that Valentina ultimately would have won that lip sync, as we saw in the episode. Now I agree though that Gia should have been saved and that Monique and Farrah were more clearly the bottom 2 of the week. Now Valentina here, she would probably judge it fairly enough to say that Farrah should be eliminated, though there could be a way where Monique gets eliminated since she didn't have the first episode win, but she placed safe whereas Farrah was at the bottom, so I assume that Farrah goes home. Now let's go on to Snatch Game. Snatch Game of Love, to be precise. Kind of not a big fan of this version of Snatch Game, to be honest. I prefer the normal layout, but let's see how my judging went. You guys will see that my judging again deviates a bit. My top 3 of the week were Trinity, Naomi, and Manila, like in the original episode. I thought those were clearly the top 3. I thought that Monique was strong, but not strong enough, though I would actually say Monique was just perfectly safe. And I think that Monet, Gia, and Latrice were the bottom 3. I really have no idea why Valentina was on the bottom. Like, I thought Valentina's performance in this group was more than safe. I thought her boots runway was quite successful, and I thought that her portrayal of Earth the Kid was at least impressive, like acting wise, and it had some funny moments there too. So that I think is absolutely reason enough to say that Valentina would be safe, and I thought Monet's Whitney Houston was absolutely atrocious. The top 2 of the week would be Trinity and Manila, like in the original episode, Naomi again placing high but not winning. And the bottom 2, I agree though, would be Gia, but then Monet. I thought Monet's runway was exceptional, but I don't think it should be saving her here. Latrice had some funny lines in her Snatch Game, like the top and bottom bunk and the top and bottom bunk joke she had. I thought stuff like that should save her. So Gia and Monet were the bottom 2 of the week. I think Manila would win the lip sync like in the original episode, and here of course she doesn't have to deal with Latrice being in the bottom, so I would assume that she would probably eliminate Gia in this case. Now let's move over to the Jersey Justice episode. Here again, I thought some judging was really weird. The top 3 of the week were Monique, Naomi, and Manila. To me, those 3 were the clear top 3, though Valentina was also really strong, but her runway pushed her to a safe position. The bottom 3 being of course Monet, Latrice, and Trinity. I do not understand why Trinity got a safe placement. I do not think that Trinity was much better or worse than Monet. Latrice was clearly the worst this week, but Monet and Trinity were pretty similar to me this week. Ultimately, I think that Naomi again doesn't place a win. It will be between Monique and Manila. And I think that the bottom two should be, yes, Latrice and Trinity. I thought Trinity's runway was good but not exceptional, whereas Monet's was really fun, and I ultimately think that Monet was a bit funnier in the Jersey Justice improv challenge than was Trinity. I thought Monet had a lot of funny lines in there, like the hostile joke, like the quarter joke, whereas Trinity was kind of just this one-note mean character. I think that Monique would end up placing the win here, and here I was struggling a bit. Of course, we saw that Monique really struggled with sending Latrice home, and she did say verbatim that if it was anybody else it would be a different story. So, for instance, if it wasn't Monet versus Latrice, but Latrice and Trinity. But ultimately in the next episode she said she based it off the track record because she thought that was the fairest thing to do. So I'll go as far as to say that she'll stick to the same decision and eliminate Latrice, who is clearly worse than Trinity. Now onto the Lady Bunny roast. Let's look into the episode. The top three of the week would be Monique, Monet, and Manila. And I clearly think that, of course, Manila and Monet were the best two of the week, so Monique would be safe here. The both top all-stars of the week would also tie here as well. I thought the lip sync was perfectly fine and was very equal, so the tie makes sense here. The bottom three, of course, being the remaining queens, were all kind of bad, but I do feel like Trinity and Naomi were particularly bad. I think that Valentina had some successful jokes in there, whereas Trinity and Naomi were uncomfortable to watch. But as we know in this episode, there was no elimination planned. As we go into the LaLaPaRuZa. The LaLaPaRuZa was, I think, quite controversial because people thought maybe it was a bit boring seeing 4 lip syncs after one another, but I thought it was one of the better comeback episodes ever, and I hope there will be some sort of the LaLaPaRuZa again in a future season. Of course, the episode layout would be the same, with Monet and Manila being safe this week, and I think ultimately the outcome would be the same, with Farrah, Jasmine, and Gia not winning, Latrice winning and returning, and no one from the current All-Stars being eliminated. Now, let's go to an episode which I thought was judged extremely, badly, the Club Challenge. To this day, I will not understand why Trinity and Manila were the top two, no, not Trinity and Manila, Trinity and Latrice were the top 2 All-Stars of the week. I thought Trinity blended into the background in her group. I thought Latrice was fine, but she wasn't great. The obvious top 2 should have been Monique and Monet. Their runways were probably the worst, but I feel like runways should only be put into consideration when it comes to deciding who of similarly performing queens did better or worse to decide then ultimately who is a top, who is a winner, or who's in the bottom. So here, I think Monique and Monet would be the top 2. And of course, Naomi and Valentina in the bottom. The B group can be saved. And this will be a great lip sync. Oh my god, Monet and Monique, that will be amazing. But I do think Monet would win. I think she's a bit of a better lip syncer than Monique. And I think obviously she would decide to send Valentina home. It makes the most sense and it's the fairest decision. Now onto the very, very controversial Makeover Challenge. Now this episode's outcome was of course the most controversial of all, and it was a bit iffy as to what I think would happen. Now go with me here. I agree with the fact that Naomi and Monet would be the top 2 of the week. I thought that both Trinity and Monique were strong this week, but I thought Monique's look was a bit messy and I thought Trinity's was a bit basic. So I agree that Naomi and Monet had overall the best performance and the best makeover, and I also think that Naomi would of course win this week's episode. I thought that her lip sync was one of the best of the season, so Naomi, congratulations. Now, I also agree that Latrice and Manila were the worst this week. We had the situation with Jersey Justice in this scenario, or in this iteration of this season as well, where Manila wasn't able to save her friend. There wasn't a big emotionality maybe this time around because it was Trinity or Latrice, but ultimately I think the other queens would still get the sentiment that Manila would be willing to do her own game for reasons that were not agreed upon by the rest of the group. In general, maybe Manila multiple times would have voiced how she did in her original season, but I ultimately think was her demise, how she's maybe a bit too competitive and was too willing to send other people home. I do not think that Naomi's decision of eliminating Manila was a bad one. I probably would have done the same. Manila continuously said that she was thinking of eliminating queens that were performing better. She literally picked Monet's lipstick when she didn't need to. She probably would have picked Trinity's over Latrice too. And she, while Valentina was in the bottom of the Snatch game, was like iffing everybody and saying, well, maybe I'll send Valentina home. So I understand why Naomi did that. Of course here, we don't have the situation where Latrice saved Naomi the week prior because Latrice was safe. But I think when it comes down to it, Naomi's decision was more so based for her own game. And I think Manila, in this scenario, would have gotten a chop as well. But maybe this time Monet wouldn't have picked her lipstick. It could have been Latrice. Of course, this would have made a massive difference because then Manila would go into the finals with obviously the best track record. Or at least she would make it to the next episode. But I do think Naomi would have still picked Manila. And kinda great. That was gaggy. Now onto probably one of the worst episodes in Drag Race history, the Sex and the Kitty Go 3 challenge. It was very badly written, not enjoyable. It wasn't even the Queen's fault, really. More than anything, it was the fault of the stupid writers of this. I really didn't disagree with the judges here too much. I definitely agree that Monique and Trinity were the best of the week, and the other three were worse. So, as in the episode, Trinity would end up winning this episode, and between Naomi, Monet, and Latrice, I kind of want to keep it that only two people are in the bottom at one time, to make it fair and consistent. And when comparing the runways of these three, I definitely think that Naomi's runway was the strongest. So I would keep her low and have Monet and Latrice in the bottom, up for elimination. And Trinity, of course, continuously said that she wants to beat the best, so it would be crazy if she didn't eliminate Latrice. And now, onto the finale episode. My judging would be very precise and concrete, so I'll consider this episode as a competitive episode as well, with the judging criteria being based upon their performance in the song challenge and their final runways. And based on that, I have some placements. Definitely Monet being the winner here. I thought she had the best verse, and her runway was good. It was not bad, but her performance in the main challenge was exceptional. Clearly the best. I think Trinity and Naomi would have placed low. I thought Trinity had pretty poor choreography and pretty poor lyrics. Naomi's were a bit basic, though I feel like they were shortened. Maybe not, but I think these two were really poor. And I thought Monique was perfectly safe, though Trinity and Naomi did end up having the best runways of the week. But as I said, runways are additional criteria. They are not used to make main judgments. I'm a girl with numbers, so my judging will be quite precise again and will be based upon how the queens did in the entirety of the season. So as you can see, it's just a positive scale, with eliminated being a 0 point and win having 6 points. And you can see that a bottom placement would have 1 point and a top placement 5 points, but I did make the winning person of a week, so winning a lip sync, get an additional point, right? So I differentiated it quite a bit, but I feel like this makes the most sense to me. Here are my calculations, so you can see for each episode how the queens did. And in the last column, you can see the average then of their performances. And as you can see, we have a pretty clear result. In this version of the season, Trinity and Naomi wouldn't meet the top two of the last episode. Trinity would end up having the worst track record in the top 4, unlike her original season where she had the best. I think there, as Bob Drag Queen did say, Trinity got some high placements or wins that actually should have gone to either Naomi or Monet. So Trinity in my version ends up placing 4th, and Naomi, due to her bad performances in the last episodes, ends up placing 3rd. Now Monet and Monique though have the same score. Now they can go to a final lip sync. It would be the second Monique versus Monet lip sync of the season. It would be iconic. I mean, these two with Christina Aguilera's Fighter, that would be great. And we either have one clear winner, but I feel like the lip sync would be quite equal. And looking at the score, they ended up scoring equal. So if I judged All Stars 4, Monique and Monet would have both won. Would have been a double crowning that would have made sense because these two queens were doing absolutely perfectly. Of course, Manila being eliminated episodes earlier was the reason why these two were able to win. Otherwise, of course, it would have been Manila. But that's the game, the name of the game. And Monique and Manila, not Monique and Manila, Monique and Monet were smart enough to not only play well in the challenges, but also in the workroom, which catapulted them to being my winners here. And how gorgeous would that have been? Now, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you disagree with me, sound off in the comment section. Of course, this is all just highly speculated, but yeah. Thanks so much for watching.